Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth Series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on Monday, February 5th. Also, a great pleasure to be joined in our studio today by Representative Mike Rice, whose district includes the towns of Dorset, Danby, Landgrove, Peru, and Mount Tabor, and who serves on the House Committee on Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry. Representative Rice, great to have you back in the studio.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it seems like only yesterday we were all here for the preview of the legislative session, and now it's a month later or so. And
Yeah, we're headed into week 6.
time flies when you're having fun up there under the Golden Dome, right?
Yeah, of course.
And it's been an interesting session already. And I definitely would like to talk to about some of the issues that you and your colleagues are grappling with up there. But before we get into that, I just wanted to start off by noting that you were recently honored by the Futures Caucus and selected for one of their 2024 Democracy Innovation Fellowships.
The Future Caucus is a national organization that serves to sort of bring together younger voices in legislatures, Gen Z and millennials, from all across the country and from all across the political spectrum, who are really focused on, sort of trying to move beyond this toxic polarization that we've really sort of grown up in American political discourse, and trying to see where are the things that we can come together and work together to actually make progress. I think importantly, it's not an organization that's sort of about being in the middle on every issue or forging a third way. It's really about saying, hey, I am, a progressive on this and I'm a conservative on this, but where are the things that we can, still sort of proudly holding on to our identities, find common ground to work together on specific issues. And then, so doing that in each state and then coming together nationally to say, hey, this is what's working over in Colorado, and there's this interesting initiative down in Oklahoma, and sort of being able to see what's working in other places and maybe take them home to your own state, home to Vermont in my case. So it's a national organization, state chapters in many states, including here in Vermont, where we have our Vermont Future Caucus. And the fellowship is, there were 29 legislators from across the country chosen for this first inaugural round of policy innovation fellowships. 3 of us from here in Vermont. They have them in 3 different categories this year, so policy categories, and the one that I was interested in and was thrilled to be selected for is strengthening democracy.
Well, that's certainly an area that we need strengthening on, no question. And congratulations again on being selected for that.
Thank you.
That sounds like really interesting and becoming quite interesting to kind of see what you and your fellow colleagues come up with. I guess I just wondered, kind of building off of that, what are some of the big issues you feel that folks in the millennial and Gen Z age cohorts regard as the, really, really important primary things that ought to be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the democracy piece is a big one. I think folks who are, acting in good faith and interested in government service from all across the political spectrum understand that we're in a crisis of democracy now, both the sort of in the large way that we see every day or try not to, and then in lots of small ways too. The specific project that I'm trying to think through within this strengthening democracy cohort with the Future Caucus this year is, how does it work in states like Vermont, where we have a part-time citizen legislature, which is a thing to be proud of, right? People coming from their communities, giving of their time and going to Montpelier and bringing the voices of their communities up to the State House and really working together with folks from all across the state to move us forward. Something to be proud of for sure, but I think that there are some realities at play in who can be in the room and who can't even imagine that kind of service being part of their life because of the need to earn wages, take care of kids at home, all the number of factors that make this kind of service hard. And so, if that's a reality with our citizen legislatures, which are not uncommon across the country, and then also those legislatures aren't sort of resourced with staff or tools to really ensure that we're doing the most sort of effective, efficient work in the State House and serving our constituents well, being sure we can do that constituent service and outreach part of our job. If we don't have the resources for that, then how well are those citizen legislatures working? And do we need to be concerned about the balance of power? You know, we have this three equal branches of government, but in reality, in these states where we have part-time legislatures with few resources and full-time executive branches with many agencies, you start to ask questions about what that balance of power really looks like, whether legislative intent is being carried out by the executive branch in the way that the legislature intends during those many months of the year when we're not there. And so that's sort of my specific piece of the strengthening democracy is how do we really set up these part-time state legislatures across the country to have, you know, the oversight and resources to really make sure that those voices from our communities, you know, I represent just about 4,500 people in Vermont, just like each of my colleagues across Vermont. We really are the closest part of government to the communities that we represent. How do we make sure those community voices are really sort of being served and being brought at full strength under the dome?
Well, I've noticed that one of the items of under consideration, or at least being talked about, is how do we get more younger members of the into the legislature? And one thing to point out is that, you know, well, it's very hard for someone to make a living being a legislator. That's what, $15,000 a year roughly, but by the time we're all said and done, and obviously that's not a living wage. So something has to change somehow or another. Even to add, let's say, health benefits or something like that. What do you think could be done to kind of maybe encourage more folks in your age cohort to kind of, you know, say, well, you know, I could make this work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the challenge of the income is real, certainly, and lack of benefits. You know, I hear often, you know, conversations among legislators who are around my age, who are doing this alongside me. You know, folks who are working 2 or 3 other jobs throughout the year to try to patch things together, coming home and working on weekends, you know, to make sure that they can then go up on Tuesday morning and serve. I think that we do have to have real, frank conversations, you know, statewide conversations in our communities about what does representation look like? What does that powerful story look like if, for instance, you know, 40% of the state senate is collecting retirement income, which is, you know, more than double the percentage of the state that's collecting retirement income. And when most of the state, you know, the legislature, by definition, is folks who are either retired or wealthy enough to be able to take that time and not have a replacement income, or have a spouse at home who makes the income for the family, or who don't have kids. You know, I for instance, you know, that's my piece of the puzzle that I you know, the wages aren't great. I do rely on my partner's, you know, wage to make up for our household income, but I don't have kids that need childcare throughout the week, and I think, you know, being 2 hours away from home and having young kids, I probably wouldn't be able to swing it if that piece was sort of added to my puzzle of how to serve in the legislature. So I think that we do have to have real conversations. I understand the desire to keep this sort of definitely part-time, you know, it's not a career, but I think there need to be some tweaks to make it more possible for more people to consider this avenue of service if they're interested in doing it. And right now, too many people, I think, are just shut out from ever even thinking about that.
Well, I mean, it's a system that was designed, what, in the early 19th century? and I guess based around the idea of the agricultural calendar,
Yep.
I suppose, which I suppose is a perfect lead-in to something else I wanted to ask you about, since you serve on the agriculture committee. What are some of the issues that you're hearing from farmers and folks in the agricultural sector that need to be addressed somehow?
Yeah, so it is my pleasure to sit on the Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry Committee. I think it's some of the most important work that happens in the building, especially in a state like Vermont. Um, and we do still have a few working farmers on the committee. Speaking of that legislative session designed around the agricultural calendar, I'm not sure they would agree that it's still necessarily designed around their calendar, but we do, our vice chair and a few of our other members do indeed go home to the farm at night. Which I think is really important. It keeps
Yeah,
us sort of
well,
balanced
sure.
and really plugged
Grounded
into
in what the real
yeah.
world is like out there. Yeah.
Yeah, you talked about the shrinking number of farms. I think the shrinking land available for farming is a sort of a consistent concern. How do we balance the needs of all of the ways in which we use the land, which is housing and forests and forest economy and biodiversity, and energy generation, and then farming and ensuring that not only is farming a viable career path here in Vermont still, but also, we saw through COVID what reliance on these global supply chains can look like in a crisis. It looks like empty shelves at the grocery store, right?
Looks like it doesn't work.
Right. So ensuring that we have that farmland here to be a little bit more food sovereign, to be able to rely on our own neighbors and communities. I think what I saw in Vermont compared to other places, as I was talking to family and friends in larger cities and other states, that grocery store empty shelf problem was really acute because they don't know where else to turn for food. Whereas I remember thinking, okay, well, the shelves are empty at the grocery store. Let me run up to one of the 3 farm stands that I know is in a 10-mile radius where local farmers are supplying food to these communities. So ensuring that is a viable path that can continue growing both for the farmer and for the communities that they're serving, I think is sort of really top of mind. And then how do we do that? How do we ensure that access to land and access to local food and access to the path of farming as a career in the face of climate change when we see, over the summer farms flooded and even those who weren't flooded suffering enormous crop losses from the constant rain or the late May frost, all the factors that we're seeing of climate change playing out on the farm in Vermont. And how do we make farmers resilient and adaptive and able to sort of plow through that, if you will, to get to the next season and keep providing our communities with food.
What's the state these days of the organic sector? For a while there, it seemed like that was a growing part of the state's agricultural picture, and perhaps it still is. I'm not sure how they fared during the pandemic or whatever, but is that part of the agricultural scene in Vermont that is thriving, growing, surviving? What's its status?
Yeah, so I'd say, Vermont's, in terms of percentage of organic farms, Vermont is very high per capita compared to other states in the country. We tend to have a lot of smaller, more diversified farms than in some other parts of the country. And that lends itself often, I think, to folks who are interested in farming organically. In terms of specifically the organic dairy industry, dairy is so tied to these national markets, right? And so what we saw with organic dairy was that for a number of years, sort of in the early to mid 2000s, organic dairy really made sense, and we saw a lot of our farmers convert their operations to organic because the payments were there for them to do that and to make it make sense for their businesses. What we've seen in terms of that national milk market and the way the prices are capped, we saw, last year and for the year or two preceding that, organic dairy sort of in this crisis where their costs of production were way higher than the cap at which their milk prices, in contracts with the organic dairy co-ops and the other purchasers who come and take their milk. So last year the legislature, stood up this emergency funding that is about $6.9 million to make direct payments to organic dairy farms that were still in business and shipping to try to help them, and not make them whole, but try to help them make up the difference between that cost of production and the payments they were receiving to try to keep the land in farming and to keep these businesses alive. And also to help them pay the bills that then trickle out into the rest of the community, whether it's to the vet or to the feed store. And that seems to have worked in terms of a stabilizing force. We see approximately the same number of organic dairy farms in business now as we did when those payments started to go out last summer. But certainly I think, the industry as a whole is not out of the woods. I think we're trying to develop ways on the committee to give them tools either to continue to be an organic dairy, but maybe to bring some of the processing onto farm rather than relying on contracts with co-ops that set their prices. We've stood up some grant programs that would, for instance, allow a dairy farm to come and get some help with funding for a processor on farm, so they can turn their milk into yogurt and sell it at their farm stand instead of sending the milk off the farm. Those kinds of things to help show different paths for operations to keep that land in farming and keep it in organic dairy, but not be so reliant on this national market that we don't control. And we've also stood up programs to help the farms that say, I think dairy isn't for me. I want to keep farming. I want to keep this land sort of responsibly stewarded, but it looks like it's not going to be as a dairy farm anymore. We've set up some grant funds to help those farmers transition to other kinds of operations. Get the equipment that they need to switch, whether it's to a different kind of animal. Maybe there's a market for goat and sheep dairy these days that there wasn't before, but they need some different equipment to make that work, or they want to switch over to planting a produce crop, those kinds of things. So those grant funds are actually open now, so farmers can go to the Agency of Agriculture's website and click over to the funding opportunities. They'll see a couple of different open grants. One is an agriculture development grant for produce and meat farmers and operations, and the other is a small farm diversification and transition grant program.
A couple of years ago, it seemed there were a lot of issues around fertilizer runoff. It was running off of farms into streams, into lakes, causing some issues there with milfoil and what have you. Is that still something that is a concern, or has that been alleviated somehow?
No, I wouldn't say it's been alleviated. It's certainly a concern. Always water quality is going to be a major concern. And, in this state where we have a lot of the sort of larger agricultural land being right in that Champlain basin, it's definitely something that's always going to have to be managed. There are some ongoing sort of agreements between the Agency of Agriculture and the Agency of Natural Resources in terms of who's responsible for which type of enforcement of those water quality issues, and definitely something that we're always sort of have an eye toward watching, making sure that that piece of stewardship is going forward as it needs to.
One other story that caught my eye was, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, there was a federal program that would have given income-eligible people with children more financial assistance for food this summer. My understanding anyways, this came before a committee, but Vermont opted out of that program, that federal program. And I guess I just wondered, was that totally because the computer system was not at the snuff or something? Or there were more to it than that?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. It is, yeah, so it's a federal dollars that would provide essentially an extra benefit for families, qualifying families with children in school. over the summer, so that they can have that extra funding to be able to put meals on the table during the summer when kids aren't accessing 2 meals a day in school as they do all year round with universal school meals. Um, I think it is not the case that Vermont, that the governor turned down the funding for some of the other reasons that were stated by other Republican governors across the country, which I'm grateful for. But it is really unfortunate that it seems that our sort of systems, both at the Agency of Education and at DCF, are just not sort of at the level that they need to be able to essentially drill down into the data of children in schools and see, okay, which of these families are eligible for this funding, and then how do we literally sort of get that EBT card and load those dollars onto it and get it out to those families. The agencies responsible don't believe that they're in a position to be able to do that. There are some ongoing IT upgrades happening that make them believe that they will be in a position to commit to taking these federal funds in 2025, summer of 2025. So hopefully if we miss it a year, it'll only be a year. And I know they are still exploring possibilities for getting some exemptions from USDA rules that are in place with this new program to be able to offer it this summer, but they're just not in place to commit to that yet. So I don't think it was a political decision or anything like that, but it is really unfortunate because it is a situation in which we're just literally turning away federal funds that would be coming here to help feed families, and that's never something that we want to be in a position of doing.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but oh well. I also wanted to ask you about a column that you recently authored that appeared in the Manchester Journal about a bill about H673 about the outdoor recreation industry here in Vermont. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what was in that column, and kind of where you see things going from here.
Yeah, so this is a really exciting bill. Also, before our committee. Our committee has jurisdiction over state parks, and so in turn we see a lot of the outdoor recreation related legislation. This bill would essentially, so we understand that the outdoor recreation economy is responsible for about 5% of Vermont's overall economy. It's right up there at the top of the list in the country in terms of contributions to state GDP, behind Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah. So what this bill would do is conduct three things. One is conduct an economic impact study of the outdoor recreation economy in Vermont, so that we can drill down beneath the data that we have access to. So we have access basically right now to federal data that tells us 5% of the economy, up there when compared to other states. But what we don't have is data that drills down into a county by county level to see where is that outdoor recreation economy really thriving. Where is it? How is it supporting Bennington County? How is it supporting Rutland County, et cetera? And also, how is it split across activities? We have such a diverse outdoor recreation economy in terms of the different activities that people who live here participate in and visitors come to participate in, whether it's hiking, mountain biking, snow sports, boating, fishing, all these things that we do in our woods and our mountains and our waters. And so how is that outdoor recreation economy spread across those activities, and where are the areas for growth? Where are the places where if we were going to make investments, it would be smart to make them, because those can continue to grow and continue to bring more dollars into our communities. So that impact study is one piece of what the bill does. Another is that it gives some staff capacity at an organization called the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council, which is an organization that's made up of member organizations from across the state. Groups like the Mountain Bike Association and town recreation directors. Dorset's director of outdoor recreation sits on the board of the Trails and Greenways Council, for instance. And they also have a statutory responsibility to serve as an advisory board and in an advisory role to Forest Parks and Recreation in the Agency of Natural Resources. So it would give a little more staff capacity there to help make sure that that statutorily required role is being fulfilled, and also to help serve all those organizations across the state that are really doing a lot of the outdoor recreation, trails, development, and stewardship in communities. Um, so I think that, I'm the lead sponsor of this bill. I'm excited to see it come to our committee. We just introduced it, and looking forward to hearing from stakeholders with testimony over the coming weeks. I think that it's just a way to really make sure that we're, first of all, understanding the impact of this part of our economy that's obviously sort of outsized and growing and important and supports all kinds of other parts of our economy, whether it's hospitality or other sort of pieces of the tourism economy, but also supports stewardship of our land. Folks who are recreating on the land are much more likely to want to care for that land, want to make sure that those forests remain forested, make sure that the waters remain clean. So sort of really connecting the outdoor recreation economy to that tradition of stewardship and care is I think a really important sort of factor behind the purpose of the legislation.
So that ties into so many things between discussions around revising Act 250 to climate legislation in the minute or so that we have left. I guess I just wondered, the conversations you're having around this bill here must have a lot of linkage with folks who are concerned about those issues as well. I mean, the climate piece alone is obviously so huge in the outdoor recreation, whether you're talking about skiing or hiking or kayaking, whatever it may be, and how do we do whatever we can to ensure that there'll be plenty of snow in the mountains in the future
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah, definitely. So the third thing the bill does is set up a process for creating a statewide best management practices that would then be handed down to all these community organizations, often volunteer-led organizations that are responsible for the management and stewardship of trails and other recreation assets across the state. And a big part of that is making sure that our outdoor recreation is ecologically sound and is sort of caring for the ecology piece of the forests and that the trails go through, for instance. So really making sure that as we're continuing to build and then maintain these trails, that we're doing it with sound ecological practices in mind, and that's what those best management practices would help us do. But yeah, I think that it really is. I mean, climate, it touches everything. We see it. I think it is easy for us to see now in Vermont with things like the July flooding and the May frost and the December flood. It's just it's here. It's impacting every aspect of our lives, and I think making sure that when we're looking at bills that deal with different pieces of our economy, that deal with different pieces of our environment, that we're looking through them with lenses of resiliency and mitigation and adaptation, so that we can continue to thrive here in Vermont in a way that is both ecologically and fiscally sort of sound. That's a big part of the purpose behind this bill, and I think a lot of the other things we're working on this year.
All right. Well, I'm sure there's much more we could talk about on all of these and other bills that are before your colleagues up in the State House, but we'll have to leave it there for today. But I wanted to thank Representative Mike Rice for being with us to bring us up to speed on what's going on in front of his committee and elsewhere in the State House. So thank you, Mike, for being with us and sharing your thinking on it. And now we'll let you get back up to the Golden Dome and have another week of work up there.
Yes.
And thanks to all of you who have been with us today. Hope you found our show interesting and informative. We'll see you again the next time.